everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to see so many faces of people who are looking to make an impact through their careers. My name is Natalie Lavery, and I'm the marketing lead here at Climate People. Excited to dive into our panel discussion with all of our incredible panelists and provide some more insights. But before we jump to the exciting part, I wanted to provide some context on who Climate People is and then go over briefly some of the insights from our barriers to working on climate survey. Quickly, before we start, I just want to gauge a little bit of who's in our audience today. So if you wouldn't mind just filling out this quick little poll, that would be great. All righty, I think we should be good now. Thank you so much for doing that. All right, so before we jump in quickly, Climate People is a, here it is. I'm not sure if y'all can see this or not, but so we can see that 86% of our respondents are looking for a climate job, 14% are hiring for a climate job, 37% have a climate related job, and 63% have a not climate related job. So awesome, we will take note of that, and our panelists will ensure to tailor those results towards that a little bit. Okay, so Climate People is a climate tech recruitment agency dedicated to decarbonizing the economy through placing mission-driven talent into climate tech careers, focus on software, data, product, and user experience recruitment across all climate sectors. Essentially, and most importantly, our sole mission is to make an impact by mobilizing a workforce transition to work on climate. So again, thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited to do this with all of you. So we can dive in now to the presentation. So as you can see here, this is a graph of the 5 stages of early adoption. We have the innovators, the early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggers. According to predictions by Terra.do, we need 100 million people working on climate solutions by 2030 to address the demands of the climate crisis. That's a lot of people. And currently today, climate as an industry really falls in that early adopters phase. So climate founders and employees are passionate about climate mission and typically go out of their way to seek climate opportunities. So this is the second fastest growing category. People in this category have the highest degree of education, leadership, and financial lucidity. You can go to the next slide, Wes. So kind of backtracking a little bit, Climate People likes to classify our job seekers into 4 personas. We have climate motivated, which just means these people are 100% motivated by working on climate. Persona 2, climate focused. These people want to work on climate, but are unsure about exactly how. Persona 1 and 2 really fall on that left side of the bell curve that we were just looking at, the people in the early majority. So that's currently what we have working on climate. And this is generally speaking. Then we have Persona 3, which is driven by impact. These people are socially and mission driven, but don't necessarily know about climate jobs. And then we have job oriented. These people are looking for a job. They're not optimizing their search for climate or for mission really. And these Persona 3 and 4 fall on the right side of the curve. And in order to get that 100 million people working on climate, we need to attract not only Persona 1, Persona 2, we need 3 and 4 as well. So again, the vast majority of job seekers as a whole fall into that Persona 3 category, meaning they care about impact and they want to work on something meaningful, but that meaningful thing is not necessarily climate. It could be, but it's not 100% climate. And on the flip side of that coin, climate companies, or at least the climate companies that Climate People works with, are prioritizing mission. So they're turning away candidates who have exceptional tech skills and want to work on something impact if that impact is not 100% climate. So this just means that we need millions of people working on these solutions, and companies are limiting themselves by requiring climate experience. And also job seekers are limiting themselves as well because they aren't aware and they're not optimizing their search for climate. So in response, we asked ourselves, how can we attract those mission-driven candidates and get them on the climate side of things? And in order to do that, we conducted a survey. We surveyed 554 individuals, people in climate roles, people who are interested in climate, and those who have never even considered working on climate. Quick little disclaimer, we try to really make this survey a representation of the entire climate community at large. But we did have to rely on our resources to get the survey out there. So it does lean a little biased towards climate people's audience. So that being said, we interviewed or surveyed 177 people who have a climate job and 377 who do not have a climate job. Of those 377, 93% have considered a job in climate and 7% have not considered a job in climate. Of those 554, 75% are aged 25 to 44, 76% are US based, 68% are Caucasian, and 50% are male. So here are some of the key takeaways from our survey. Essentially, people want to work in climate. That's not the issue. Respondents agree that climate jobs are beneficial. They think that climate jobs are in every profession, and these climate jobs give them hope for the future. They also see the direct role they can play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. However, they don't necessarily see a space for themselves individually. They see it for the industry at large. When it comes to their unique role, they have a harder time seeing that. They also don't agree that every job can be a climate job. So we can see here on the top graph, when people are asked about why they want to work on climate, people say rewarding work, mission alignment, and reducing emissions are their top 3 considerations. So this just means that they care about the climate issues at hand and they want to have a part in them. However, when we ask them about jobs specifically and taking a job in the industry, we see more answers like remote work, money, hour flexibility, type of work. Kind of all of the real world factors really come into play because it's not this hypothetical, if I were to take a job, it's if you are taking a job. They have to consider these things. This slide really focuses on the resources and the barriers that people overcame or utilized on their climate search. So we can see here that people who are considering a job in climate are far less likely to use climate-specific resources. So people who are in the climate community are using those resources, but people looking to get into the community are not as likely at the same rate. And then the number one thing preventing people from taking a job in climate is their lack of experience in the space. Again, this goes back to that bell curve. People are disqualifying themselves and not getting a job because they think that they don't have the experience. This slide calls to some of the gender discrepancies that we see stereotypically in the traditional job market, and they often coincide, and we can see here that they do coincide with the climate job market as well. Our split between genders is pretty even. We had 50% men and 48% women. And we can see that women are more likely to believe they don't have enough resources and are more likely to disqualify themselves, whereas men are more likely to assume they'll have to take a pay cut and they see less of a growth trajectory in the industry. So again, really just playing to those stereotypical norms that we see. So all of that being said, here are some of the key takeaways that we have discovered for companies, for people who are looking to hire climate talent. The first is awareness. Again, people who are not already in the climate community are far less likely to use climate-specific resources. So that being said, it's absolutely essential to a source outside of the climate realm if we want to attract those mission-driven and job-oriented candidates. Second, mindset. We encourage you to ask yourself, is climate experience actually necessary? Who is the ideal candidate? Can it be those mission-driven people who want to make an impact, but just don't necessarily know about climate jobs? And then 3, incentives. We have to prioritize those real-world factors that go into the job decision process, whether that be flexibility, salary, remote work, whatever it may be, but people are optimizing their job search for that. And in order to get the best talent, those have to be our top considerations. And here are some of the takeaways for job seekers. First, don't disqualify yourself. Even if a company prefers climate experience, you could still be a good fit. They need quality talent and will oftentimes still work with you if you show your passion. Second, know the ins and outs. As we saw, climate companies are prioritizing candidates that align with their mission. So align yourself with their mission. Learn and understand as much about the industry as you possibly can and use those climate-specific resources. They're out there to help you. And then third, don't be your own worst critic. As we saw a few slides back, responses show a disconnect between how people view others' roles and the industry at large compared to how they view their individual place. And just don't let imposter syndrome dictate your search. So with that, I'm so excited to introduce you to our incredible panelists who really are going to break down this even further and give some of their incredible insights. Up first, we have Brendan Anderson, who is the founder and CEO of Climate People. We have Janet Mata, who is the head of careers at Terra.do. We have Joshua Stair, who is a freelance service designer and research lead at Work on Climate. And we have Yin Liu, who is a partner at MCJ Collective. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited for this. Before we kick it off to our audience, please remember to ask all of your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to all of those during the Q&A at the end. Great, so now we're gonna get all of our panelists queued up and we can kick it off in a second. Perfect. So if y'all wouldn't mind, I want to go around and start out by just having you all introduce yourselves. I think you can do a little bit of a better job than I can. So Josh, you want to kick it off and introduce yourself?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, really happy to be here, and great to hear all of the insights so far. So I am a designer and based in Berlin, so a bit later in the day for me, but also experiencing the heat like many of you. I am, designer, but also activist, communicator, rediscovered artist recently. And so I'm like freelancing, but also on the side, volunteering as a researcher for the Work on Climate community. So we'll get into this a bit later, I think, but just finishing up a study that we did, running like 1-hour interviews with 19 climate job seekers and people who had actually found jobs as well. So very intrigued to talk about this and hear also the perspectives of others as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Janet, or Yin, you're unmuted. How about you go for it?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for being here. I think we have a pretty global audience here. My name is Yin Liu. It's very nice to meet you all. I have spent the past 10-ish years in the education technology world. I come from Google, Coursera, Khan Academy, and have been in earnest on my climate journey since summer of 2020, when the wildfires in California, where I lived at the time, just really did a number on my mental health and on my children's mental health, and really made me, reconsider what I'm spending my time on. And I came to the realization I'm wasting my time if I don't spend every moment of my professional career trying to fix the climate crisis that we're in. And so I went on my journey, met a whole bunch of people, and tried to figure out where in the climate economy I wanted to land, and realized that the biggest impact I can make is by moving IQ points into the climate space, which I think this illustrious group will all agree with. And so I joined MCJ Collective, which is, I guess, for alliteration's sake, we have 3 pillars. We have content, community, and capital. So really, we're a media hub. We have one of the, more well-known climate podcasts out there called My Climate Journey Podcast, hosted by my partner, Jason Jacobs. We have an investment fund that we write small checks to early stage climate tech companies. We've invested in over 70 companies to date. And we also have a really vibrant Slack community where about 2,000 people come together on a daily basis to learn from each other, to have really robust debates, to post jobs, find jobs, to just talk. And I know of quite a few friendships that have blossomed from that. I know one relationship has blossomed from the community. So just lots of really great energy that help us reach our mission, which is how do we break down knowledge silos to accelerate climate innovation. I'm sure we can get into more details, but that's me in a nutshell. Can I popcorn it over to Janet?
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely. I am so excited to be here. Thank you, Natalie, for convening this. Such an important topic. So I'm head of careers at Terra.do, and that means that I do everything for Tara and our community related to helping employers find amazing talent for their climate organizations and helping amazing talent land in the great climate job that they want and is best suited for them. And we have kind of three mechanisms. Three is always the right number, right? For helping do this. Tara.do really started with our Learning for Action course. And then we grew a bunch of other smaller courses outside of that. The idea is to be sort of this learning space, this learning hub for people who are curious about climate, have maybe started to make some changes in their everyday life, but want to know how they can systemically impact climate a little bit more seriously. And the goal of all of our courses is to get as many people who take a course working in a climate related occupation as possible. And that could be upskilling in your current job and just sort of putting a climate lens on what you're doing today, or that could be seeking out a new position. It could be taking on some activism or some volunteer work on the side. But we want at least, our metric is at least 20% of your time focused on solving the climate crisis. And we can do that. We can set you up for success through courses. The second thing that we do is the community. So we've just launched our new app. If you're not already in the app, I would highly recommend downloading that and checking that out. The app is a great place to network with other people who are also really passionate and interested in working on climate. And it's sort of a nice hub of activity and opportunity. So we've got a job board in there. We have events in there. I posted this event in there, for example. Anyone can post events. Anyone can post jobs. We want that to be a really nice central place where you can come and learn about opportunities. And then the third piece is really the way that we serve employers. And right now that we're really focused on startups in particular, helping some of these more innovative climate technology companies grow and be able to do some of their hiring. We've partnered recently with MCJ and ran a job fair just for portfolio companies, for example. It was a huge success. We've gotten lots of great feedback. We're going to do that again with other kind of groups of companies that are finding they need to grow. We'll be doing lots of partnering, I'm sure, with climate people as we move forward, but really kind of bringing all hands on deck to try to make sure that we can support companies who need to hire in order to do really important climate work to be able to do that. So we do that through a bunch of services, and I run those as well. So that's my role at Tara. I am thrilled. It's an absolute dream job. I've been there for just over a year now and hope I've got many more years in me.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you. How about you, Brendan?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Anderson. I'm the founder of Climate People. Natalie, thank you so much again for putting this together. And to the panelists here, I'm honored to be on a panel with all of you. I've gotten inspiration from all of your organizations. Quite frankly, all of your organizations have played a key role in helping climate people grow, in increasing our awareness, the community within the MCJ community as a start. I will say, Yin, I mean, when I was introduced to the podcast first and then joined the Slack community, for me, that was probably one of the most foundational and important things that happened, because I actually found a community of people who felt the same way that I did. And that was so inspiring. It really helped lead me to creating this company. And then we've done some partnerships with the Tara.do group and, of course, those in work on climate. So I'm so thrilled that you guys have joined us today. At Climate People, our mission, you know, we're a classic recruiting agency. I came from a recruiting background where I've been placing software and technology professionals into full-time jobs for over 20 years. And I got to a point in my professional career where I wasn't satisfied anymore with the types of companies that I was doing business with. I wanted desperately to do more than the personal choices that I was making to reduce our carbon footprint and be more sustainable at home. And yet I spent years looking for companies, other staffing agencies that might be recruiting for the types of roles that I knew how to recruit for, and I couldn't find it. It wasn't until, quite frankly, joining the MCJ that I realized that I could be the one to create a company that just focused on recruiting technology folks for climate, and felt like that was the best use of my skills to make an impact in the space. So today, our current focus is really recruiting just for software, product, and designer type of roles. In the future, we plan on adding recruitment capabilities in some of the more deep tech and scientific recruiting needs, and then more on the business, finance, sales and sales and marketing and accounting jobs, all the other kind of corporate business functions that a company would need. But for today, we really just focus on the tech side of recruiting. So that's Climate People.
Awesome. Such great companies and people we have representing them. So awesome. As we can see from our survey results, 51% of people believe that they aren't eligible for a climate job because they don't have that prior climate experience piece that we touched on. What are some ways that all of your organizations combat this? Anyone can kick it off, whoever has it.
I can start. There's sort of a nice kind of obvious segue that I can, talk a little bit more about our courses. So one of the things that Terra really was initially designed to do is exactly that, kind of give people who have domain experience. So you might be a software engineer, you might be a designer, you might be a product manager, and just kind of layer on this climate lens and knowledge and give you some opportunities to have some experiences applying your skills to a climate context that will help you essentially be able to kind of talk the talk and know enough context about what's happening in climate, both on the problem side and the solution side, to have those really great networking conversations with employers. To know kind of what you want to put in your LinkedIn profile or what you're going to put in your resume, and what's going to go in the body of that email that you're going to send to somebody when you're interested in a job, that really clarifies and gives you confidence and employers confidence that you're an operator in this space, even if you've never occupied a full-time job in that space. So that's one thing that I think actually goes a long way. I'm so curious to hear what Brendan and Yin have to say about this as well. But oftentimes what we see is just a little bit of knowledge and contextual information, and then the confidence to be able to talk about that and express that interest in conversation can actually be a really good jumpstart in that process.
Absolutely.
I can add on to that, if that's all right.
Please do. Yeah.
I just so much agreement there, Janet. And I just want to emphasize a point of the question. It's like, not that people don't have, like they don't think they have they're eligible for a job because they don't have private experience. I think it's actually like they don't know how their private experience prior experience can be applicable to climate tech. So to Janet, you just said, like, how can we give people climate context? I think I'll add to that is like this sense of being part of a tribe is so important. When you're thinking about climate, it's important, but you're like, gosh, like I don't know how to get in. It can feel like an exclusive, I guess like club that you're like looking from the outside in. And I just think it takes like one person that that maybe is a little bit ahead of you in your climate journey to say like, actually, hey, like this is how I did it. And join Work on Climate, join Terra, join MCJ, join Air Miners, join all these great organizations where you'll find people that are like you, that have similar skill sets, and have just been like 2 months ahead. They've maybe like heard like a few extra podcast episodes, read a book, and know a few more people. It's kind of like this, I don't like this party analogy. Like you can say like, well, I'm throwing a party, and just say like anyone's welcome. Or you can throw a party and say like, here, I can offer rides. There's going to be vegan options at the party, and like I'll help introduce you to a few people at the party. Like that second scenario, like you feel more welcomed into the space. And so I think like having that tribe to belong to is so important. And maybe I'll give an example of someone who is outside of the climate world. I'm working in oil and gas. Actually, this is an MCJ community member who was a geologist working for a big O&G company. And when she was trying to transition in, I saw her early on, and she was like, I just don't know like how I can take oil and gas experience and apply it into the climate world. And lo and behold, like 4 months later, she's now working at a bio oil sequestration company called Charm Industrial. the exact same skill set as a geologist, figuring out where to, drill. But instead of taking oil out of the ground, she's actually putting oil back into the ground. And so it's just like, she was able to connect with people that helped her figure out, where to land in the ecosystem. So I think, finding people is super important too.
Absolutely. I feel like even we saw in the survey results that people who are not a part of the climate community are way less likely to use those climate specific resources. So that's such a good point, is bringing those people in and actually not just subconsciously bringing them, like directly inviting them to the party. That's an awesome point. Yeah. Does anyone else have any insights to add to that, or should we move to the next question?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So in the interviews that I ran, also majority like similar selection, I guess, of demographics compared to your survey as well. So a lot of like US quite experienced people as well that we spoke to, and like majority white as well. But like, so that just to caveat the insights, but I think there's like a difference between the skills you perceive you need or you believe you need, and then like what's actually written on a job description. And so I definitely heard a lot of people already counting themselves out before they even looked at a job description. And there's this really interesting piece by in Forbes that talks about like career mobility, and they have like this nice Venn diagram. In order to transition to new jobs, you need like skills, like what experience do you have, a social network, who do you know, and then this last one of like occupational identity. And that's like belief that you can be something else. And I feel like that's, I think, touching on what you said, Yin, like actually being aware that there's jobs out there that you can either be like changing your identity, but also like, understanding the skills you already has translate to an existing job. I'm definitely curious to hear more about like what the employer side of things as well, because there were sort of more strict things where people were looking at job requirements and actually seeing like a lot of kind of specific sustainability skills or like domain expertise, as well as I think, I mean, this was biased towards like people who had more experience as well, who are transitioning into climate work. A lot of the time it might be like hard tech skills as well. So maybe like a data scientist who's used to working in one language and now everyone's working in Python or whatever, like needing to learn some of those hard skills as well and catching up to like other youngsters. So yeah, I think I'd be really curious to hear if anyone has perception on like how much is perception versus how much is like reality, and like employers having like very hard requirements as well.
Yeah, just to tie a bow on this first question, Natalie, I agree with all of you. And on the ground, as we are recruiting and talking with prospective job seekers, Natalie shared earlier one of the first slides around the personas that we've identified, and that's not perfect, but generally speaking, what we've identified is candidates generally will fall into one of four categories. And for the third and the fourth persona of folks that don't know that these climate jobs exist, for those candidates in particular, almost all of them think that climate change jobs are for people that are scientific, hard engineers, which of course there are lots of those jobs in the space, or it's for policy. And most of the software talent that we talk about, they don't realize there's a big disconnect, that there's software and data and product and design jobs that are in the space. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that those same people, their network, they don't know people that are working in climate, that are pulling them into these communities. They might be working with other maybe recruitment agencies, or they get hit up on LinkedIn all the time. If you're a technology professional, you're getting hit on LinkedIn all the time. And so if you aren't aware that those jobs exist and you're not actively going out and seeking for that type of work, all you have to do is open LinkedIn and look at your email feed, and there are 50 jobs for those software engineers that they could, it's low-hanging fruit for those folks. They also don't know that climate base exists. They don't know that these communities are out there. So bringing more awareness, it's, I mentioned to Joshua earlier before this started that today CNBC had an article about work on climate, and MCJ and Terra were both cited in that article as well. We need much more of that so this becomes mainstream. With 125 people attending this right now, hopefully all of the people that are attending this share this with their networks, share these different communities with their networks, just to make it more, everyone becomes aware that these communities exist. Because I would say overwhelmingly in tech, people just don't know that these jobs are even out there, because in their face all the time are big tech, FANG companies. That's what they see all the time. You have to go searching for this. And if somebody in your network doesn't present it to you, you oftentimes won't find it. But that was a long answer.
No, definitely. Yeah, Joshua, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that a lot of the stuff is, just seeing one person in your network that has this job. And also, I think expanding what's considered like a climate job as well. Like an architect can be a climate job, a farmer can be a climate job, like understanding what this definition is as well. And like, I think like the Project Drawdown often talk about like every job being a climate job. I was very intrigued about like your survey where some people disagreed with this kind of statement as well. Maybe we can get into that, but just understanding the areas of like influence that you have. And in terms of like what work on climate is currently doing and what we plan to do in the future, like there's a lot around like just sharing success stories. We have like a channel called I Got a Job, which is just like exposing what kinds of jobs people are getting and giving a sense of hope as well, to see like this person managed to do it and so can I. Doing events with employers, mentorship programs. And I think in future, in terms of raising awareness, we want to sort of activate other ecosystems, like get into these other networks where climate isn't part of the conversation yet. So say it's like, I don't know, a women in tech community, or a conference about finance, or schools, or job fairs that aren't necessarily about climate. Basically, that's like our future mission, is to basically make climate work mainstream in areas in which it's currently not being talked about. So I think that's kind of where we're headed, I think, and curious to see what others are doing as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I think earlier too, Joshua, you brought up a really good point about how these job descriptions are laid out in ways that a lot of people don't qualify for them. And that probably hurts with the imposter syndrome element I was talking about earlier too, and people are disqualifying themselves. Do any of y'all have insights on like job postings and how to make those like a little bit more accessible to people who are looking for jobs, or anything along those lines? I can start too, because I feel like, well, at least what we've seen at Climate People is a lot of times people, when they're creating a job posting, they oftentimes like to lay out their ideal candidate and lay out all of the things that they 100% want, knowing that that person doesn't exist. And then on the flip side of that, if people are seeing that and they're not applying. So I know at Climate People, we like to encourage our clients to really only put those necessary skills and then have a discussion about the ones that are not. Something along those lines. Brendan, you probably have a little bit more insights on that as well.
I have plenty to talk about there, but I thought Janet was about to say something. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. And if you weren't going to say something, that's okay.
I was just going to clarify if Natalie, you were talking about kind of the job description piece or the candidate side, but it sounds like you're talking about the job description piece.
Yeah.
Please, Brendan, continue.
Yeah, so I think Joshua may have mentioned this earlier. One of the things that we try to be very intentional about when we do engage with a customer on a particular search that they need some outside help with is, if they are looking for someone that has previous experience in the space, we really try to dig into why. Why do they need to have that experience? And are you open to transferable skills or experience in other industries? In part, largely because personally, I don't want to go recruit out of another climate-oriented company and fill a job with my customer. I've left an opening in the climate space. I want to bring people from other industries and other sectors into climate. And so we do spend a good amount of time working with our customers to truly understand that, and then educate them on their willingness to look at skills that are transferable from other industries, right? There might be very complicated data problems. Of course, there's complicated data problems in other industries. Can we look at people that come from healthcare, come from finance or fintech, what have you, education technology? Those are also, particularly in ed tech and health tech, that's also where you're probably going to find people that align on the mission, that they'll be interested in climate oriented work. So it's something that we do spend a lot of time on. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There are some customers out there, or some companies out there that really want people with experience with energy data or what have you. And so in that case, those are very specific searches, but we spend a lot of time on it.
I think one of the things that's so interesting about this space is that it's really new. This is not an industry like healthcare, or I mean, healthcare might be a bad example because of the technological change, but it's not an industry that's been around for a long time. No one has 10 years of experience doing anything in climate unless you were sort of an early scientist, studying this stuff. So I think that there's two things that I would say. One is for candidates to always take job descriptions with a grain of salt. If you meet half of the requirements of a job posting and you're excited about it, go for it, apply. Like, there's no reason not to. You might as well. The other thing is there's a lot of education to be done, frankly, on both sides. And it sounds like Climate People is doing an awesome job owning this on the employer side of transferable skills, because this is a new industry area and a new field. We just don't have, you're not going to find all of the people that we need to fill these vacancies in companies with people who have existing experience in climate. So companies need this sort of coaching around where can I find a comparable skill set or a transferable skill set that might, still be really effective and be able to hit the ground running, but maybe with a little bit of additional support and education and context. And same thing on the candidate side. There's a lot of folks that I talk to where the biggest challenge is not that they don't have skills, it's that we need to just change the way they're talking about the skills so that you can talk about your experience managing products in ed tech or in a SaaS company and make that feel relevant to the type of product that a climate tech company is launching. And the same thing could be true of software development or data analysis and anything else that we see vacancies for, right? And there is some support that, certainly Chair can offer, that Climate People can offer as you coach clients, that the Slack communities can offer by just going in and saying, here's the job I want, or here's an example of a job description that I'm looking at, and here's my existing resume, and I feel like there's a gap. How can I close this gap? And there's a lot we can do with just helping identify what skills can transfer over and then talking about those in the right way and doing some of that work for the employer when they don't really understand, what the transferable skill might be.
Like I'll just add on that the climate economy has gone through a renaissance, right? There was clean tech 1.0, but now like climate tech is here, and a lot of people don't have a lot of experience. Founders that we've backed, quite a large number of them, like never did hardware before and now are doing hardware companies. And so people are making the switch. I just say going with the mindset of never saying no to a conversation. If you are a founder, if you are a hiring manager, and if someone like reaches out to you, like, please always take that call, take that Zoom call. You never know when someone is coming to you and they might have like an excellent background, but you didn't think that, they would have been a fit with your company. And it turns out actually they are a good fit. I know 2 examples off the top of my head of people that have, just opportunistically like had a conversation and ended up in a role. And if you are looking for a job, like, please don't let a non-response from an application deter you from finding someone in that company to have a conversation with. Sometimes like you just need that person to know you, hear your story. And so I implore anyone who's searching for a job to like go on LinkedIn. It's like we're kind of at like this I guess like the next industrial revolution, right? Like there's so many opportunities, and everyone is in the mind space of like banding together and helping each other. And so like people will talk to you, reach out to them on LinkedIn, ping them on Slack. Like I think you'll be surprised at how welcoming and how willing people are to have a conversation that could lead to more connections, or it can lead to a job. It could lead to a lot of things, and just so never say no.
All right, so I want to just jump in here because you're 100% right, Yin. In fact, on this panel, we have somebody that applied to a job that they weren't remotely qualified for, and they got hired into a marketing job, and that was Natalie. She applied for a position at Climate People to be a recruiter. She has no recruiting experience, but in reviewing her resume, in the back of my mind, I was thinking about hiring a marketing person. When I reviewed her profile, I thought, let me have a conversation with her. And we created a position for Natalie. She became the first employee here by just applying to the job, right? And to both of you have mentioned now, Jana, I think that was great advice for people, and we should really make sure that we highlight this. I have no doubt that if someone went on to My Climate Journey or Work on Climate, and they posted a job and their resume and said, I need help with figuring out how I need to position myself or how I can position myself for this job, people will respond. People will help you. So take that advice and run with it, do it, because it will work.
That's how I got my job at Terra too, actually.
No
I
way.
reached out, yeah, this is very embarrassing actually. I reached out as I was looking, they had a product manager position open. I am not a product manager, but I'd always been kind of curious about it. And I reached out and said, hey, I'm interested in learning some product management. I have this background in ed tech and I'd like to start working in climate. And Anshman, our CEO, basically said, well, you're not at all qualified for a product manager, but we've been noodling on this jobs problem. And it looks like you have a lot of experience in careers. And let's talk about that. So
That's
just
awesome.
another boost.
I love it.
Yeah, 2 out of
Awesome.
3. That's great. Yeah, so I love that like awareness piece, and Ian, how you were touching on networking is from both sides. It's having a conversation if you're a candidate, and then also having a conversation if you're an employer. And Jana and my story both really exemplify that, like having those conversations is beneficial for both sides. But I think like in what we called attention to in the survey results is that people who are not in the climate community are not really or rarely using climate specific resources. Do y'all have any suggestions for ways that we can get those people, other than networking? I know we've touched on networking a lot, but any resources or ways that we can extend those climate resources to people who aren't aware of them yet, but want to be?
I had some burning things from the last question that I'm
Oh, go for it. Yeah, you can tie it back in. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and maybe I'll tie it back into the last question. I think something I would just add to is, and I saw it also, I don't know if it's unique with climate tech, is that like startups tend to have, when I was working in a startup and also built like a hiring product, they tend to hire people who have done the job already. And like we often advised and like built products also to like help them hire for potential and look for mindset and look for motivation and engagement and whether they have the ability to learn, basically. And that's also super important in climate because things are changing all the time. Like I did the TerraDo course, and if I go back and look at some of the classes now, like half of it has changed and been updated because like new information's coming out. So like just being adaptable is probably the number one skill that I would hire for if I was looking for people. So I think just as an employer, being open to like more focusing on mindset and for potential, because that's also what we sometimes need is for like resourcefulness, ingenuity. I also think that a lot of the answers so far have been given are like focusing on climate tech. So I guess like that is a new ecosystem, but I would challenge a little bit to say like this there have been climate jobs way before this, like, you know, think tanks, public sector stuff, like if you're working for a transportation company, if you're working in a green team or whatever for ages, sustainability teams, like economists, policy advocacy, like there's tons of like jobs that I think one of the ways I think we can all maybe do a bit better at and definitely work on climate is to just expand people's idea of what a climate job is. And like, if you go into any of these communities, like there's no really any job boards that like go outside of climate tech and as much, and also it's very US centric as well. So like a lot of the supply of jobs is there. So I think that is something that we kind of need to work on. And then in terms of, can you remind the question again?
Yeah, well, you kind of answered it in a way. It does tie into that awareness piece. And if we limit our or we expand our definition of what a climate job is, it is inclusive of more people who are not strictly in that tech realm. But yeah, I was asking how we can ensure that people not already in climate have access to climate resources.
If anyone has answers, go ahead.
And I feel like I'm going to get on my soapbox. I have lots of thoughts on like what societally we can do to just bring more awareness. Like, I think there's tops down approaches. And Joshua, to your point around how, climate tech tends to be US centric, and like the people that are thinking about climate tech tend to all, many tend to come from a software background. I think there's like huge swaths of people that are not in white collar roles, that are in blue collar roles, that are working on climate jobs now. And so anyway, I'm belaboring the point. I think corporations have a huge part to play in ensuring that every job description, if we're going to get tactical, has some sort of preamble on climate. Like every job is a climate job. And I think there's a role that universities and community colleges could play in having career centers, like just a large, where's the talent pipeline coming in of people that are going to get jobs in the next 5 years? Like they have an outsized role in helping students like form that climate mindset. I think unions, like in the US, we're talking about like Teamsters, AFL-CIO, the National Education Association, like the leaders of the unions can also be talking more about climate as an opportunity for the economy to grow. I think like if I could wave a magic wand, and this is pipe dreams at this point, but if we can have universities and trade schools and unions and corporations all band together and just like do thought leadership pieces, do marketing campaigns that really paint that picture, like every job is a climate job. I think we would unlock so many more IQ points to like fuel this economy so that we can, get to that 100 million number, Janet, you were talking about, that Terra.do has a mission to like move all these people into working on climate. Like, anyway, and the soapbox, I just think it's so important, but it's going to take like huge policy changes to make all that happen. But like that is a dream of mine, that if we can be there, like we would all be so much better. We move faster.
One of the questions that I asked in these interviews was like, when did you first start thinking about like considering a climate job? And often it's like quite a long tail, and then there's like some trigger point. Like oftentimes like the most common thing that comes up is like a personal climate sort of disaster event, actually, where like actually some of us in this call have called out like the wildfires and stuff that have actually like caused, I guess, the urgency to start to pivot. I hope that like we can expand beyond that for sure. Like it doesn't like, but that's kind of a natural human tendency, I think, to care about stuff that directly affects you. So I think that's one aspect. But then there's other things where people have started to sort of get frustrated about the limitations of their own individual impact, and they start doing by individual actions, becoming vegetarian, buying an electric vehicle, all of these different things, and then realizing, okay, what's next? So, and it's the same for myself. I like looked at my own, did an audit of my life, and I did this kind of stuff. And then I thought, what's the major next area of impact? And it's career or political action, I guess. And so even helping people take that first step and being aware that like there's so many careers, and like not making it such a big jump as well. Like I think that transfer of skills, like you don't even have to change up to become a whole different person. You just can already start influencing in your current job as well. So not making it like this huge leap, but taking small little steps is maybe something I would sort of advocate for a bit more of.
Definitely.
Joshua, I had a conversation with a sales and partnerships person last week. They actually, so not the type of candidate we generally place because we focus on tech, but they were referred to us through a software engineering candidate that we placed. And we had a conversation. It was interesting. They were interviewing for sales and they were looking for partnership roles, but the jobs that they were finding in climate were BDR type roles, which would have been a step back for them. And so one of their considerations was staying in their current role in a partnerships position and really introducing more sustainability, because they would have the opportunity to pick who are the partners we're going to work with, so we can figure out what organizations out there have the same values that we have and that are sustainable and trying to develop products that are net zero. And I said, that is a climate job right there. Like, you don't have to go to this other climate tech company. You could stay in your current role and focus on sustainability through partnerships. So I think that's an important point for people.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, I want to leave a few minutes. I know we only have like 3 or 4, but just for like 1 or 2 questions, and then to everyone else who answer or ask questions in the Q&A box. I will follow up to this with a link to the recording, and then also a link to all of the unanswered questions, because we have 30 questions and I don't think we have time to get to all of those, but don't worry, they'll be answered. But to do 1 or 2 live, one of the questions that we received was a lot of the climate jobs that I see focus on technical skills, engineering, academic research, UX, etc. Any advice for generalists and what spaces they can look at to find these jobs? Does anyone have any insights on that?
Yeah, I just typed out an answer to a similar question, but my advice for generalists is always a little bit tricky, because what I would tell generalists is to actually focus as much as possible. So even though you could maybe you have some sales or marketing experience and you have some operations experience, and you've done some advocacy work, or you've worked in a nonprofit and done some philanthropy. The problem when you have a generalist profile is that as an employer, if I'm hiring for Terra.do, I'm looking for somebody who can fill a specific type of need that we have. And when I look at a generalist's profile, somebody who's done lots of different things and that comes across, it's really hard for me to say, oh, gosh, is Natalie perfect for this? I don't know where I would put Natalie, right? She's got lots of these maybe different skills or different areas. But what I'm looking for is someone where I can go, oh, I see. Natalie is perfect for this kind of role. And that doesn't mean that Natalie has to change her background or get some additional experience. It just means that you've got to frame your profile in a way that makes it really obvious what it is that you are best at, or most suited to, or maybe most interested in right now, or where your strongest skill set is. Helping that come through, even though you have a generalist background, is going to be really, really important. And there are lots and lots of opportunities that you could fill doing that.
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Another question that we have, which is really interesting, it says, how do you keep your energy and optimism up? I feel so small and like nothing I can do can possibly matter when competing against big oil and big ag.
I would say the antidote for combating the doom and gloom, which I felt that when again the wildfires really did a number on my mental health. Was like, we're all fucked. Excuse my cursing, but like I just had this like feeling of like doom and like nothing could get better, and my kids are going to grow up like wearing respirator masks, for weeks in the summer, and like the thing that was like that really like just got me so energized was I ended up like spending 10 hours a week. I was still working at my previous job, and I was like, I'm going to carve out 10 hours a week to just learn. 50% of the time was podcasts. I'm a slow reader. So podcasts, like 25% reading and 25% just talking to people. And it's those conversations with people where I asked like, why out of all the potential solutions in the climate space did you focus on this particular thing? And just hearing people talk about like why they want to dedicate the next 5-10 years of their life working on a particular solution, like got me out of that rut. And now like every day when I go to work and I like, hear pitches from founders working on a bacterial strain that is going to eat polymers faster, to, you know, creating a 401k platform that allows people to invest in green funds. Like, I'm like, yes, this is the antidote to the doom and gloom. The news will not go away. Like, it just won't. And so if you can surround yourself with like, wow, people are working simultaneously on 100 different solutions, like that helps with the optimism mindset.
I would echo that. I'm going to plug you a little bit, Ian, but the MCJ podcast had made a huge difference for me. It was like a turning point in my psychology around, oh my God, everything is awful and we're all going to die, to, oh wow, there's some really fascinating things happening here. Kind of give that sense of hope, and channeling that energy. And the podcast was a great way to learn about all these different opportunities that are going on.
I agree 100%. And I would add to that, by the way, shout out to Carbon Collective. Carbon Collective does a 401k plans for climate people. And I think all of our customers should use Carbon Collective. I would also say Peak Action, PIQUE. I believe, I mean, we've known those guys from the very beginning, but Peak Action absolutely is the opposite of doom scrolling. So that's another organization that really does a great job of positive climate storytelling.
Our TikTok grew from like 50, like 5,000 people to like 100K. I think that's a, you know, reflection of like, yes, people want to consume this like short form content that gives them hope.
Absolutely. People want to feel inspired, and a climate job is a great way to do that as well. Awesome. So with that, thank you all so much for attending. We truly could not do any of this work without every single one of you in attendance. And thank you for taking an hour out of your day to help us move the needle forward a little bit further on climate change. And then, of course, Janet, Joshua, Yen, and Brendan, cannot thank you all enough for today. And not only for today, but for the incredible work that all of you are doing in your jobs, and then also what your organizations are also doing to get more people working on these life-changing causes. So yeah, with that, I'm so excited to wrap it up. I will follow up to this webinar with a link to the survey results so that you can dive into them on your own a little bit, a list of all of the resources that we mentioned. So I know there's lots of good stuff. We don't want to miss out on that. And then of course, all of the unanswered Q&As. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate all of the work that you're doing, and see you all soon.
Thank you, Natalie.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. See you.